Joe Satriani has made a few headlines recently for being out on tour with Sammy Hagar doing a tribute to Eddie Van Halen, and he's also made a few headlines here and there for noting that playing Ed's material can be extremely challenging. I want you to listen to something that Satriani said back in the day about Eddie Van Halen, and in fact what I want you to do is listen to the audio clip, but listen for what Satriani doesn't say, and then I'm going to ask you your opinion on his thoughts. Before I play the Joe Satriani clip, I want to mention to you that I got a really cool clip of Eddie Van Halen playing a Jimmy Page riff that's after the Satriani clip, so stick around for a full video. So here's Joe Satriani talking about Eddie Van Halen right here.
That guy's got a right hand of doom. Eddie was such a wonderful compositional improviser. He was obviously a really great composer on guitar. You know, he figured out a way to write these really fun songs, but they were really groundbreaking in how he arranged his guitar parts. You can hardly find any songs where he's strumming and then overdubbing some other part. You know, it's a very different way of playing. He's in a trio and he's trying to fill up the space with a kind of an orchestral style of playing. And then, of course, when he goes to solo, we know from his interviews that he improvised and he tried to capture the spirit of the song and of the band, I guess, of the live event, which is a whole kind of style in itself. You know, it's very, very different than, you know, like Pink Floyd, you know, the way David Gilmour would approach a song. And all equally valid, but uniquely different. The odd thing about Eddie is that sometimes he would play stuff that didn't make any musical sense.
What I find interesting in that clip isn't so much the fact that Satriani emphasizes Eddie Van Halen's compositional skills and his overall vision of the guitar. It's that he doesn't mention his technique. He doesn't mention his tapping, and he doesn't say, well, Eddie was a huge influence on me as a guitar player. Instead, he focuses on what Ed contributed overall as a musician, as a visionary, as an artist. And I think that this is something that gets overlooked a lot with Eddie Van Halen because of his tapping technique. I think that this works both with people who are huge Eddie Van Halen fans and for people who criticize him. People who are huge Eddie Van Halen fans often say, well, look at his technique, look at how he invented tapping or popularized tapping. And people who don't like Eddie Van Halen often say, all he does is tap. I don't understand why people say he's so great when all of his guitar solos sound the same. And the reason that you might think that all of Eddie Van Halen's guitar solos sound the same is simply because he tends to do a lot of tapping. And even when he's not tapping, some of his scales sound as though he's tapped. So I think that Joe Satriani is really articulate in this case about why Ed is such a huge player and why Van Halen was such a huge band. It's not just Eddie Van Halen's ability to shred and his ability to shine as a soloist that matters. It's his overall vision of the guitar as an instrument of self-expression. And my final thought here before I play you the promised clip of Eddie Van Halen is that Ed comes from a jazz and classical background, meaning he took classical piano lessons as a kid. His father was a professional clarinet player and he was a jazz musician. So Ed grew up with a background of compositional music and had a deep understanding that goes beyond what Joe referred to in that clip as strumming and then overdubbing over the strum. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but what I'm saying is I think that the reason we never got that from Eddie is because his mind from a very early age was already thinking in 3 dimensions, and he in fact had to construct his own equipment to get to those 3-dimensional sounds. Now here is a clip that I promised to play for you of Eddie Van Halen handling a riff by Jimmy Page and also a solo by Jimmy Page. Let's listen in right here. Now I want to close this video with one final quote from Eddie Van Halen. And here he's talking about how important personality is to a musician rather than equipment. In other words, we all know that Eddie Van Halen was not only a wizard with the guitar, but he was a mad scientist with his guitar inventions. But in this clip, he talks about what's truly important to any musician. So let's listen to him talk right here.
We left Japan, first world tour. Our next show was the day after Dallas, Texas World Music Festival. Our equipment wasn't there. Played in front of 80,000 people. We borrowed, I said, hey, can I borrow your scarf? Can I borrow your belt? Can I borrow your shirt? Anyone. Out of all the bands there, nobody would let me use an amp. So I went to the sleazy music store. I had to put a deposit, enough money down, so if it was scratched, I'd have to buy it. I bought one Marshall Brown cabinet with a Music Man top in front of 80,000 people, and still stole the show. Personality is what does it, not your gimmicks. Even though we do have extravagant lighting, but still the same theory of it focuses on us.
So my question to you is, do you think Ed's general musical vision is the driving force behind his genius? Or do you think that it's simply his pyrotechnical techniques and the kind of flashy lead playing that gets a lot of attention? Do you, in short, feel that Eddie Van Halen was a true musical genius, or was he just another lightning boy? Personally, I think Eddie Van Halen was a musical genius of the first order. This is what I think, but what really matters is what you think. So if you have an idea about this or any other topic connected to classic or contemporary music, please drop it in the section below, and remember to like and subscribe. Also, if you're enjoying the videos, you can help us out by clicking on the thanks button right down there below. Or if you prefer, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link and leave a donation at the Buy Me a Coffee site. Finally, if you're in need of a bit of financial assistance, you can click on the Capital One link down there below in the description box and get yourself a shiny new credit card using their one-step application process. Thanks a lot.